Remember that first sweet, juicy strawberry this spring? The one that tasted like pure sunshine, bursting with flavor, straight from your own backyard? That incredible moment, that explosion of sweetness, it doesn't happen by accident. In fact, if you want that same abundant harvest next season, what you do? Right now, in late summer, is absolutely critical. Most gardeners make one huge mistake after the last berry is picked: they do nothing. And that single oversight costs them half their harvest, if not more, the following year. But don't worry, because today I'm going to walk you through 3 simple, essential tasks that will guarantee an abundant, disease-free strawberry patch year after year. We're talking about renovating your patch, trimming old leaves to prevent disease, and feeding your plants for next year's fruit production. Do these 3 things, and you'll be swimming in berries again. Let's dive right into the first, and arguably most important, task: renovating your strawberry patch. This might sound intimidating, but it's really just a fancy way of saying we're going to clean house and give your plants the space and energy they need to thrive. Think of it like spring cleaning, but for your berry patch, happening in the dog days of summer. If you've got June-bearing strawberries, which produce one big flush of fruit in late spring to early summer, this is an absolute non-negotiable. For ever-bearing or day-neutral varieties, you'll perform a slightly modified version of this after their main summer flush, usually in mid-August. Why is renovation so critical? Well, strawberry plants are prolific. They send out runners, those long stems that root and create new plants. If left unchecked, your patch quickly becomes a dense, tangled mess. This overcrowding leads to smaller berries, reduced yields, and a breeding ground for diseases. The older mother plants, after producing fruit for a few years, also start to lose their vigor. They become less productive, putting out fewer, smaller berries. So, renovation is about removing the weak, making space for the strong, and ensuring your patch stays productive and healthy. Here's how I tackle it, step by step. First, after your June-bearing harvest is completely finished, usually by late July or early August here in USDA zones 5 to 7, or even into late August for zones 8 to 9, I start by clearing out any weeds. This is much easier to do before you start thinning, as you can see what's what. Once the weeds are gone, it's time to identify your plants. You'll have your original mother plants, and then dozens, maybe hundreds, of smaller runner plants. The key is to keep the healthiest, most vigorous young plants and remove the old, tired ones. How do you tell the difference? Old mother plants often have thicker, woodier crowns, and their leaves might look a bit faded or less vibrant. Young runner plants, especially those that rooted this season, will have smaller, fresher crowns and bright green foliage. My rule of thumb is to keep plants that are 1 to 2 years old. They are the most productive. Anything older than 3 years, especially if it looks weak, gets removed. For matted row systems, which is how many backyard gardeners grow strawberries, I aim for a spacing of about 4 to 6 plants per square foot. This might sound drastic, but it ensures each plant gets enough light, air circulation, and nutrients. I use a small hand trowel or a hori-hori knife to carefully dig up the plants I want to remove. Don't just pull them, as you can disturb the roots of the plants you want to keep. Gently lift them out, roots and all. If you have a raised bed, you can be a bit more precise, aiming for plants spaced about 8 to 12 inches apart in a grid pattern. This allows for excellent air circulation and easy access for harvesting. Now, what about those runners? For June bearers, you want to allow some runners to root. These are your replacement plants for the older ones you just removed. I usually let about 2 to 3 runners per mother plant root, guiding them into open spaces in the row. You can even pin them down with a hairpin or a small piece of wire to encourage them to root where you want them. Once they've rooted and established themselves, you can snip the connecting stolon back to the mother plant. But here's the mistake I made for years: letting all the runners go wild. You'll end up with an impenetrable jungle. So, be selective. Remove any excess runners that are growing into pathways or creating too much density. Forever bearing and day neutral varieties, which produce fruit throughout the season, I actually remove. Most runners as they appear. These types of strawberries put their energy into producing fruit, not new plants, so letting them run just saps their energy. Snip them off as close to the mother plant as possible. This renovation process is hard work, no doubt, but the payoff is immense. You're essentially resetting your patch, ensuring that the plants that remain are healthy, productive, and ready to set a massive crop for next spring. Don't be afraid to be ruthless. It feels counterintuitive to remove plants you've nurtured, but trust me, it's for their own good. Once you've thinned out your patch and managed those runners, it's time for our second critical task, trimming the old leaves. This step goes hand in hand with renovation, and it's your best defense against common strawberry diseases. You might hear this called mowing the patch, and while some large commercial growers literally mow their fields, for us backyard gardeners, it's more of a precise haircut. Why trim the leaves? Two main reasons: disease prevention and encouraging new, healthy growth. Throughout the growing season, strawberry leaves take a beating. They can develop fungal diseases like leaf spot, powdery mildew, and botrytis, especially in humid conditions. These diseases can overwinter on the old foliage, just waiting for spring to reinfect your new growth. By removing these old, potentially diseased leaves, you dramatically reduce the inoculum for next year. Plus, dense foliage creates a moist, shaded environment that slugs and other pests absolutely love. Trimming opens up the canopy, allowing for better air circulation and sunlight penetration, which discourages both pests and diseases. Beyond disease, trimming also stimulates the plant to put out a flush of new, vibrant leaves. These fresh leaves are more efficient at photosynthesis, meaning they can convert more sunlight into energy for the plant. Which is crucial for the next step we'll discuss, building up reserves for next year's fruit. So, how do you do it? For June-bearing varieties, immediately after you've finished your renovation and thinning, take a pair of sharp, clean pruning shears or even sturdy scissors. You're going to cut back most of the foliage. Yes, most of it. I aim to leave about 1 to 2 inches of leaf stem above the crown of the plant. You'll essentially be giving your plants a very short haircut. Don't cut into the crown itself, just the leaves. This will look quite dramatic, almost like you've scalped your plants, but they will bounce back quickly. Within a few weeks, you'll see a flush of new, healthy green leaves emerging from the crowns. Forever bearing or day neutral varieties, you don't typically do such a drastic cutback. Instead, you'll perform a more selective trim. After each major flush of fruit, or in late summer, go through and remove any leaves that look old, damaged, diseased, or yellowed. Focus on opening up the center of the plant for better air circulation. You're not cutting everything back, just tidying up and removing problematic foliage. This is more of a continuous process throughout the season for these types. When you're trimming, pay close attention to any leaves showing signs of disease, brown spots, fuzzy patches, or distorted growth. It's critical to remove these. And here's a common mistake: just dropping the diseased leaves back into the patch. Don't do that. You're just leaving the problem right where it can spread again. Collect all trimmed foliage, especially any that looks diseased, and discard it far away from your garden. Or burn it if local regulations allow. Do not put diseased material into your compost pile unless you know your compost gets hot enough to kill pathogens, which most backyard piles don't. This trimming, while seemingly harsh, is a vital step in breaking the disease cycle and setting your plants up for a healthy, productive future. I always sanitize my pruning shears with rubbing alcohol between plants, especially if I suspect disease, to prevent inadvertently spreading pathogens. It's a small extra step that makes a big difference. Now that your strawberry patch is thinned, cleaned, and trimmed, it's time for the third and final critical task of late summer: feeding your plants for next year's fruit production. This is where we lay the groundwork for that incredible harvest you're dreaming of. Many gardeners think about fertilizing in spring, but for strawberries, late summer and early fall feeding is arguably more important for the Next, year's crop. Here's the secret: strawberry plants don't set their flower buds for this year's fruit. They set them for next year's fruit. This crucial process happens in late summer and early fall, as the days shorten and temperatures begin to cool. During this period, the plant is busy developing the tiny flower buds within its crown that will eventually emerge as flowers and then delicious berries next spring. If the plant doesn't have adequate nutrients during this bud initiation phase, it simply won't form as many buds, leading to a significantly reduced harvest. So, what do we feed them, and how? After renovation and trimming, your plants have just gone through a stressful period, and they're about to put a lot of energy into new leaf growth and flower bud formation. They need a balanced diet. I typically use an organic granular fertilizer with an NPK ratio that's balanced or slightly higher in phosphorus and potassium, like a 5-5-5 or a 4-6-4. Avoid anything too high in nitrogen at this point, as excessive nitrogen will encourage lush leafy growth at the expense of fruit production. We want strong crowns and roots, not just big leaves. For application, I usually side dress the plants. This means sprinkling the granular fertilizer around the base of each plant, or along the rows, being careful not to let it pile up directly against the crown. Then, I gently scratch it into the top inch or two of soil with a hand cultivator or my fingers. The exact dosage will depend on the specific fertilizer you're using, so always follow the package directions. As a general guideline for a balanced organic granular, I might use about a quarter cup per 10 square feet of patch. Immediately after applying, water it in thoroughly. This helps dissolve the nutrients and carry them down to the root zone where the plants can absorb them. Another fantastic option, and one I swear by for my organic garden, is a good quality compost tea. You can make your own by steeping a bag of finished compost in water for 24 to 48 hours. Then diluting the tea until it looks like weak iced tea. This provides a gentle, slow-release boost of nutrients and beneficial microbes. I apply this as a drench around the base of the plants, usually about once every 2 to 3 weeks from late August through September here in zones 6 to 8, or until the first hard frost. For those in warmer climates, like zones 9 to 10, you might continue this feeding a bit longer into fall. Beyond granular fertilizers and compost tea, a generous layer of finished compost spread over the entire patch after renovation and trimming is incredibly beneficial. About an inch or two of compost will slowly release nutrients, improve soil structure, and help retain moisture. It's a fantastic all-around soil builder and plant feeder. The timing for this feeding is crucial. You want to do it after the renovation and trimming, typically from late August through mid-September in most temperate zones. The goal is to provide those nutrients while the plant is actively preparing for next year's fruiting cycle. A common mistake is to only fertilize in spring. While a light spring feeding can be beneficial, the late summer feeding is the one that directly impacts the number of berries you'll get next year. If you miss this window, you're essentially asking your plants to perform a miracle on an empty stomach. So, there you have it. 3 essential tasks that will transform your strawberry patch from a chaotic mess into a powerhouse of production. Renovating to thin and manage runners, trimming old leaves to prevent disease, and feeding strategically for next year's fruit. These aren't just chores, they are investments in future harvests. I know it feels like a lot of work right after you've enjoyed the fruits of your labor. But trust me, these late summer efforts are the difference between a meager handful of berries and overflowing baskets. Imagine next spring, walking out to your garden, and seeing a patch bursting with healthy green foliage, loaded with plump, ripening strawberries. That's the reward for your diligence now. So, don't let this critical window pass you by. Get out there, get your hands dirty, and give your strawberry plants the care they deserve. Your future self, and your taste buds, will thank you. If you found this guide helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and reach more gardeners like you. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and joining our growing garden community here. I'd love to hear from you. What USDA zone are you gardening in, and what's your absolute favorite strawberry variety to grow? Let me know in the comments below. Next week, we're going to dive into a simple DIY project that will extend your strawberry season even further. So you won't want to miss that. Happy gardening, and I'll see you in the next